If you could read only one book to understand advertising at a level that actually changes how you think and work, I'd have to say it has to be Hey Whipple, Squeeze This by Luke Sullivan. I read it early in my career when I was just an account coordinator at an ad agency. I wasn't a creative, but understanding how great advertising gets made me better at my job almost immediately. And the ideas in it are just as relevant today as when it was first published. If you skip it, you'll probably keep making ads that feel like ads. And in a world where everyone is competing for the same attention, that's a problem. Stick around and I'll give you the key insights that you can start applying to your marketing today. Aloha, I'm Brent Chiritori and this is Ideal Marketing. In this video, I'm going to walk you through what I feel are some of the most important lessons from Hey Whipple. For each one, I'll give you the core idea, why it matters strategically, and how you can apply it. We'll cover why truth is still the most powerful tool in advertising, how brands actually live in people's minds, not just in your messaging doc, why simplicity isn't a creative shortcut, but the whole point, how to generate better ideas using a framework that's been working since the 1940s, why conflict is what makes advertising work, how to think in campaigns rather than individual ads, and finally, what the job of a marketer actually is today. Let's get into it. Bill Bernbach founded DDB, and he built the entire agency on a single belief. Customers aren't idiots who need to be tricked or lectured into buying something. His logic went like this: the truth isn't the truth until people believe you. But they can't believe you if they don't know what you're saying. They can't know what you're saying if they don't listen to you. They won't listen if you're not interesting. And you won't be interesting unless you say things imaginatively, originally, and freshly. That's all marketing and advertising really is. And it's never more true today in a world of infinite generic AI slop. One of Bernbach's early clients used to say, "Hey, I have a gimmick. Let's tell the truth." Bernbach loved that line because telling the truth in advertising was radical then and honestly still is. Marketing should be what veteran copywriter Mark Vance called the truest thing you can say. And most companies never get there. They go to the safest thing instead. Amir Kassé from DDB put it this way: great ideas that change behavior happen only when they're based on a relevant truth. And as people get more connected, they get more critical of anything that feels phony. The practical application here: when you sit down to work on any campaign or piece of content, your first job is to find the truest thing you can say about your product or brand. Not the most impressive, not the most polished, the truest. Find the truest thing you can say and start there. Venture capitalist Mike Toriano calls the alternative official marketing bullshit mode. You know it when you see it. And more importantly, your customers know it too. They've been trained to smell it miles away. Stop writing ads. Talk to the page like you're talking to a real human being who can detect nonsense. Sullivan puts it plainly: a brand isn't just a name on the box. It isn't even the thing in the box either. A brand is a sum total of all the emotions, thoughts, images, histories, possibilities, and gossip that exists in the marketplace about a company. John Haggerty defined it this way: a brand is the most valuable piece of real estate in the world, a corner of someone's mind. I'll say that again. The goal of all branding is to find a way to occupy a corner of someone's mind. There's a great example from a book called The Want Makers. The former director of England's Allied Breweries made this observation about beer: many competitive brands are virtually identical in taste, color, and alcohol delivery. After 2 or 3 pints, even an expert couldn't tell them apart. So the customer is literally drinking the brand. The brand is the actual incremental value they get from the product. And that's not just a niche insight about beer. It's true for most categories. Think about professional services, consulting firms, insurance companies, healthcare providers. In a lot of mature markets, the products and services are effectively the same. What you're really buying is the perception of the brand. Sullivan is direct about this. People don't have time to figure out what your brand stands for. That's your job. And the best way to make your brand stand for something is to make it stand for just one thing. Volvo is safe, Porsche is fast, FedEx is reliable. One word, one adjective, that's what sticks. Everything else is gray and forgettable. For your marketing, look at your brand today. If you ask 10 customers to finish the sentence, "You are the most blank option," what would they say? If you don't know, that's the problem. And you better solve it before you run another ad. Sullivan takes a strong stance on this. If you take away one thing from his book, it's this: simpler is always better. Maurice Saatchi from MNC Saatchi backs him up. Simplicity is all. Simple logic, simple arguments, simple visual images. If you can't reduce your argument to a few crisp words and phrases, there's something wrong with your argument. Think about the best taglines ever written, like Nike's Just Do It. It has nothing to do with shoes. It's about the competitive spirit. It's a mantra for your life. And yet, it did sell a lot of shoes. Adam Tucker, creative director at Leo Burnett London, put it well. A good tagline is a summation of your idea, the full stop to your thinking. Volkswagen's "If only everything in life was as reliable as a Volkswagen" is one of the most famous taglines ever written. No puns, no wordplay, just a simple, powerful, thought-provoking statement. The reason this matters strategically? Customers only have so much space in their heads to remember brands. Reese and Trout argued that in any category, there's room for maybe 3 brand names. If your message is complicated, it's unlikely you're going to get one of those slots. And here's what the data tells us about positioning. Go for an absolute. The fastest, the quietest, the cleanest, that's all people remember anyway. The claims in the middle ground are boring and just forgettable. When you look at your next campaign brief, ask yourself, what's the one thing we want this to make people feel or believe? Just one thing. If you can't answer that in one sentence, start over. James Webb Young was a copywriter in the 1940s, and he laid out a 5-step process for generating ideas that still holds up today. Step 1, gather as much information as you can. Read, underline, ask questions, visit the factory, immerse yourself in the problem. Step 2, actively attack the problem. Sit down and work through it. Don't wait for inspiration. Step 3, just step away. Go do something else entirely. Let your subconscious work on it. Step 4, the eureka moment. The idea comes when you least expect it. Step 5, figure out how to implement it. Now, you can't skip steps 1 and 2 and expect step 4 to just show up magically. Most people try to skip straight to the idea. They sit in a brainstorm with very little background knowledge and wonder why nothing good comes out of it. Young's point is that the insight only arrives after you've done the hard work of immersion. The subconscious can only recombine what you've already put into it. Sullivan also talks about the HMW approach made popular by IDEO. How might we? 3 small words, but each one matters. How assumes solutions exist. It gives you the confidence to look. Might gives you permission to play with ideas that may or may not work. You learn either way. We signals collaboration. You're building on each other's thinking, not competing with it. There's also a technique Sullivan calls the versus rectangle. Draw a box with a line down the middle. Let the 2 sides represent any kind of conflict. Life with the product versus life without it. Our brand versus their brand. Old way versus new way. What that simple framework does is force you out of flat thinking and into tension. And tension is what makes advertising interesting. If you don't have conflict, you don't have a story. That's Sullivan's blunt assessment of narrative in advertising. He uses a simple example. Take the statement, fresh food means better health. That sounds like something you might put in a brief, but it's not a problem. It's a solution. And solutions are about as interesting as filled-in crossword puzzles. Creativity happens in response to a problem. So start with the problem, not the answer. Every client has an enemy, particularly in mature categories where growth has to come out of someone else's market share. That enemy is a starting point for conflict. But conflict doesn't have to be brand versus competitor. It can be internal. Our product versus the way it used to be done. The customer's life before versus after. Aspirational self versus current self. One of my favorite quotes is from Kevin Costner and Bo Durham. You gotta play this game with fear and arrogance. Sullivan likened baseball to advertising, and truer words have never been said about both. You have to be humble enough to do the hard work and confident enough to defend the idea when it's right. Here's a practical application to that. When you're stuck on a brief for a campaign, map the conflict. What's at stake if the customer doesn't choose you? What's the tension in their life that your product resolves? Put that tension into the work. And there's a quote from strategist Mike Araz that I think about often. We tell our friends about your brand not because we like your brand, but because we like our friends. I love that line. It's a reminder that people couldn't care less about your brand. They care about the things that matter to them. So when people talk about your brand, it isn't because the marketing is clever. It's because sharing it says something about them. If your advertising isn't giving people something worth sharing, that's the problem. A campaign is a core idea expressed in a series of different executions, all advancing a single message. That's Sullivan's definition. Simple, but most brands don't operate that way. Pete Barry in the Advertising Concept book says each execution should be same yet different. Related enough that they clearly belong together, distinct enough that they don't feel repetitive. Most brands produce one-off ads. Different look, different message, different tone from one campaign to the next. The result is that the brand never builds the cumulative weight it needs to actually occupy a corner of someone's mind. Sullivan also has a useful framework for evaluating campaign work. Just 2 questions. First, could this campaign have been created without the brief? If yes, the work probably lacks content. You should be able to see the brief in the campaign. Second, is the campaign just a transcription of the brief? If yes, there's no creative leap. The work has no executional force. The sweet spot is where those 2 problems overlap. You've said exactly the right thing and you've said it brilliantly. You need both, not one or the other. Bernbach said it well. Dullness won't sell your product, but neither will irrelevant brilliance. Dull gets ignored. Irrelevant brilliance gets admired, but doesn't move anyone toward a purchase. For your marketing, look at the last 3 campaigns you ran. Do they add up to something? Do they reinforce a consistent idea about your brand? Or are they just 3 separate experiments that don't compound? This is the point Sullivan drives home at the end of the book, and it's the one that's most relevant for marketing leaders today. Andrew Essex argued in The End of Advertising that for advertising to survive, it must add value to people's lives. It will have no choice but to compete as primary content, not secondary intrusion. An advertising idea starts from what do we want to say about our product and how do we say it interestingly. An idea worth advertising starts from what can we do, make, or say that people would actually want to engage with. Advertising isn't rocket surgery, as Sullivan points out. Most people live and think in broad strokes. Volvos are safe, Porsches are fast. The genius is in getting there first and owning it so completely that no one else can take it from you. Here's a few more insights from the book which I have to agree with. A pun would pick your pocket. Puns have no persuasive value. Any headline that rhymes is beyond saving. You can think them up, you can write them down, but in the end, just close the lid and flush. Don't set out to be funny, set out to be interesting. Interesting occasionally earns a laugh. Trying to be funny usually just earns a groan. A good tagline is the full stop to your thinking. It summarizes your idea and doesn't try to be clever for its own sake. Just do it is a life mantra. If only everything in life was reliable as a Volkswagen is just a clean, honest statement. That's it, no trickery. Learn the visual cliches all the other brands in your category are using. Then do something different. Each category manages to establish its own version of boring. Real estate ads, healthcare billboards, financial service campaigns. You know what they all look like, which means you know exactly what to avoid. If you haven't read Hey Whipple Squeeze This, put it on the list. It's one of the few books about advertising that isn't just useful for creatives. Whether you're an account person, a brand manager, marketing director, or even a fractional CMO, anyone who has to make decisions about communication will get something out of it. If this video was useful, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up next. And check out some of the other videos on this channel. I've got content on brand positioning, marketing strategy, and how to build marketing that actually drives revenue. Remember, you don't need to buy more ads when you have better ideas.